Good evening, good evening. Here we are again with Help Somebody, where we feature personalities from the community that assist in helping people to achieve the goals that are set for all of us. Today our guest is B.C. Marshall. Nice to be with you tonight, Mr. Marshall. It's so nice to see you today. I had the pleasure of meeting you, and I was just so impressed with what you were able to accomplish at an early age. And so we want to kind of cover you basically. Let's go by a decade. You know, you mentioned some things that you accomplished before your 30s. Can you kind of give us a synopsis of the first years?
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Charles. You know, I guess probably the best way to establish this is that when I was 17 years of age, I had just gotten married. I'd gotten permission to get married, and unfortunately, I got fired from a job. And I was walking down the street, and I was in the middle of the snow back in Ohio, and I was wondering what was going to be my future. What exactly was my plan? What I was going to do? What job I was going to get? So I came home, and there beside the stand was a magazine. And this magazine is How to Become a Millionaire as an Entrepreneur. Now, I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant, by the way, just to be honest with you. But I said, that's the truth. That's what I want to be, right? So it shows you about how ignorance is bliss in some ways, because I didn't really think it through. So that was 17, 18, got married to a very fantastic lady. We were school kids, and she was my little girlfriend back when I was 6, 7 years of age, and met her about 10 years later. And that began an entirely different future for me. And as a result of that, during the 1960s, I don't know if many of you probably haven't had a chance to have been in during the 1960s, but it was a time with a lot of turmoil in the United States. And basically, it was pretty hard for people in my community basically to get credit, to start a business, to even get an education, let alone credit or anything along those lines. So I didn't even know that at the time. It really was so ignorant to me that during the 60s and during the various different kinds of combativeness that happened in the community, I didn't even really pay attention to it. So, but what happened was sort of interesting. I met a friend, and we were down in the basement of a real estate company. And this particular individual asked me, he said, BC, have you ever heard of double escrowing? And I said, what is double escrowing? You know, buying and selling real estate. And he taught me, and it shows you the appreciation of mentoring, of having somebody close to you that's willing to give you that information without having to sell it to you today, like today's world, okay?
Yeah.
And so he started that, and so by the time I hit 23, I'd hit that first $1 million mark. I was one of the few people that was in Cleveland, by the way, at that time. I went on during that time to open up an entertainment company during the time that Carl Stokes was the mayor of the city. We formed a company called New Era Recording, which was in lieu of him becoming the first black mayor of the city of Cleveland. And we started working with various different people, helping them to get into the music industry. We developed a performing arts school at that time. And I went on fantastically in terms of becoming successful. Now, that was the good part. The bad part is that I wasn't aware of the fact you had to pay income taxes and things of that nature, but it was a great experience. And so after we had sort of a bad period of time, the recession hit, I came out to California, and I went into several different businesses here, and it's been just one decade after another. And I guess let me go just set up to now, currently go backwards a little bit. The reason why our company exists is basically to help people, entrepreneurs who, like myself, didn't have a mentor, needed to have some kind of direction, okay, as to where to go to become successful. So what I found out is that in today's world, most of us who have ideas are really trampled down in terms of fulfilling our ideas, or our dreams, so to speak. So what we do in our company is essentially we look for what we call business startups. These are individuals, entrepreneurs, all of us are the same way. We've got great ideas, but we don't have the money to put them together.
Yeah.
We go down to the great national banks, they're going to turn us down. The venture capital companies are going to turn us down. So we had to come up with very creative ideas as to how do we raise capital, how do we market our products and services to become, you know, the greatest bang for the buck, so to speak, and then how do we become public? You know, because really, believe it or not, most entrepreneurs don't think of going public. Mm-hmm. You know, that's only been a very select group of individuals who really have taken their company to IPO, which is called initial public offering, or even the Pink Sheet or the NASDAQ,
yes,
or what have you. So those were dreams that I wanted to see that we could help people get started with. Both minorities and women, people who were coming into the country, you give them that kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
So what I guess what I would like to share with the audience is really that when you have a dream, you know, I think it's so important that you fulfill it regardless of whether or not you succeed or fail at it. It's just important that you put a mark out there, whether it's for your family, whether it's for your children, whether it's for just the community or not, that you're doing something, you're making a significant change or an effort to become successful. So what we do when a person comes to us with an idea, and for the fact I'm going to share 2 examples with you. They usually come to us with an idea. They have no idea how to run a company, okay? That was an interesting challenge, by the way, teaching people. So what we did, we essentially developed a program called EBT, called the Executive Board Training Program. Because most of these folks were just like you and I, they didn't really have any training. They didn't go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, what have you. But yet they were forced to run a company, okay? And in order to build those companies, they needed training. Statistically speaking, by the way, less than 3 to 4% of companies who start really make it past the 3-year mark. In the certain communities, and minority communities, it's even worse than that scenario, for the fact they very seldom ever get past year 1 or year 2 without going bankrupt. And the reason being that we found is really a question of the information, education, and application of their skills and abilities. So we developed a program called EBT. And so when a client comes to us, we put them through that. It's about a 3 to 4 hour program, and it's an ongoing coaching program. And then we look at their product, their service, whatever the case may be, and we determine how are we going to market that. Now, our guidelines are pretty strict, but at the same time, we say that how can we generate revenues within that particular project's idea within 90 days? Now, that seems impossible to most people, but that's how we think.
Yes.
And we start with that premise.
90 days.
90 days is the premise.
Well, in terms of your executive board training, which I've been privy to be in some of those sessions, I think it's a wonderful start. But in terms of the understanding of, let's say, the citizens of the U.S., do you think the majority of us understand the principles of how to really make money in this country?
That's a good question. I would say we have a desire. A lot of people have a desire to do so. They just don't have the training or the information. And there's been, in my personal opinion, not necessarily a conspiracy, but the system is set up really to keep people from getting that information. Okay, so we have to really come up with it ourselves. We've got to really go out there and expand on it. I've been doing what I've been doing for almost 60 some odd years, 50, 60 years. And I've probably during that period of time, I've probably worked with 200, 300 companies. I've trained probably tens of thousands of people in sales, marketing, time organization, goal setting, et cetera. So I pretty much have an idea, not necessarily who will succeed, but I certainly have an idea who will fail. Okay, if you understand that.
That's definitely.
And so we have 2 programs, not just the EBT program. We have what's called ABT. So what I've done is put together 30 different ways that we can help a young person, or any person for that matter, who's just starting out in business become successful, and how to raise capital. So there's 30 different ways. Yeah. And we start with the simplest ways. Can we work with the client in terms of generating sales, pre-selling the idea? Yes. Can we license that idea? Can we set up a royalty program, for an example? Maybe it can be joint venture with another major company, for an example. And I'm going to be citing 2 cases for the audience that I think will show you the...
Before we go there, I have a couple more generalities I'd like to bring to the fore. You mentioned the fact that the system is designed to not really assist people. I guess that's the politically correct way to say that.
Right.
And with that understanding, as a young man, I attempted to dabble in the stock market, but I found out there were a whole lot of what you call buy-ins. Today we call them fees. And what I came away with the general understanding, it was the people that was necessarily making money in the markets that made people rich, but it was the charging a fee. It was the fee structure that, basically either kept you from getting in the market, because once you got in the market, you still had the brokers, who were ushering you into basically I'm gonna call it the money pot, which the holy grail of American economics is the stock market.
Correct.
But if you look at a percentage of the population, I believe it's 3% of the U.S. Public is engaged in the stock market in terms of knowing how it works. But we know people are into hedge funds and 401ks, which is a way for money managers to get you into the stock market, but you don't, that's for the novice, basically. So I guess my question is, after wrangling there for a minute, is how can we educate the public on how to take advantage of the stock market, or do you think that's a necessary challenge that you would want to undertake?
Well, first of all, if you look at the top 1%, okay, of the country, the people, I had a seminar the other day. I asked a group of individuals, how many millionaires are there in the United States? And not one person in that room, and they all wanted to become entrepreneurs, knew how many millionaires. And by the way, that was an excessive number. Today, millionaires are not the same way they were looked upon that they will be another 5 years from now. They'll be talking more about billionaires and trillionaires. But getting back to your point, I think if you look at these millionaires, you look at the 5 basic ways that a person becomes a millionaire. First of all, has been the traditional real estate. The second has been the stock market, which is be anywhere from futures or stocks and bonds, day trading, swing trading, whatever the case may be, the Forex markets, for an example. If you go beyond that one point, then the third rising industry for that people can become successful at is, of course, obviously the internet. Now, the internet has opened up, is really laid a sort of leveled the playing field for all of us. In other words, when I was coming into existence or trying to raise money, you had to have a brick and mortar building, an office in order to be successful. You could not have credibility if you didn't have a phone number, that you weren't in the yellow pages, et cetera.
800
okay, and the 800 number, what have you. And if you didn't have a sign out in front of your building, okay? Today, a person, no matter who they may be, can have a great idea, can work out of their kitchen, and actually have a presence on the internet looking just as great as, let's say, Chase Manhattan, okay? So that gives, it sort of levels the playing field. And if you look at these 3 or 4 industries, now energy is now becoming one of the most sought after, growing kind of industry, because we all have to, at some point with the, earth warming and all the various different problems we're going to be having, energy is going to be extremely important, as you can tell.
Can we segue into that just for a moment?
Sure.
Energy, which is one of my passions, because I believe that everybody on the planet Earth, all 7 billion of us, are potential energy users. In fact, we are energy users. But within the spectrum of just procuring energy, it is my contention that energy credits, anywhere that they are produced, are transferable across any medium. Do you believe that?
Yes. I think the government's trying to set up a way that, for the fact, one of our clients that we're working with right now is addressing the issue of renewable energy, and how the government is attempting to give tax credits to those companies that are making a move toward those directions. Now, it could be mandated by the government, but most governments or most companies are doing it on their own, because they see the efficiency of doing so.
Yeah.
So I think as that fourth industry, when we talk about real estate, we talk about the Forex or the financial markets, and then we talk about the internet, now the energy markets. That's going to be the future, okay?
But it's going to be renewable energy. It's not going to be the classic fossil fuels, which the new fossil fuels are fracking fuels that they dig under the ground and get. But on the level specifically, I wanted to address, if you buy solar energy, if you get an array put on your home and you have what they call an interconnect permit, and you put that energy on the grid, and when you use it, you basically take it off the grid. In other words, it's banking your energy.
Correct.
And so in lieu of paying one of the municipalities, which is basically a political subdivision, I don't know if most people realize that utilities have been granted political subdivision, just like counties and states and the whole setup. But those energy credits that you produce in terms of getting it from the sun are the same energy credits that are produced by the fracking or by the Bush family in Texas pumping oil out the ground. Do you think that those energy credits are transferable across any spectrum?
I would believe so. And I think you brought up an interesting point. I think that all of us now are going to be responsible for our own energy management.
Yes.
Okay? As solar comes into each one of our homes, as we begin to, like you say, go into the grid, we can now make an income from that reaction.
Yes.
In other words, for the first time in the history, the little guy, so to speak, or the little lady, so to speak, can now not only control their destiny financially and energy-wise.
Can you say that one time? You can control your energy destiny.
Okay.
The whole world need to say that, because that's That's the bottom line. I don't mean to take it over, but I'm just happy
No, that's
about that. I'm so glad you said that, because I believe that's true, that we can control our energy destiny. And that footprint that you're talking about is the footprint that the president talked about at Walmart last week, talking about a carbon footprint. And each one of us as a human entity on the planet has a carbon footprint.
Right.
And erasing that carbon footprint means the production of your own energy.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Right. Well, and I think it's important that we stress the fact that we all now are empowered now to have more control of our future. Up until this time, the big industries, the big utility industries, and et cetera, controlled the game.
Yes.
Same way it was in real estate, same way it was in the financial markets, and et cetera. Well, now it's shifting a little bit because of a lot of different reasons.
So should we get out the pick in the shelf and bury Daddy Warbucks, or is Daddy Warbucks still in the picture?
Well, I don't know. I'm not certain how that plays out, but the thing that I think is so important, that the audience is listening and looking at this particular show, they now have the ability to dictate and control their futures, not only energy-wise, but also their financial future. And I'll talk to you a little bit about one of our clients. It's in the energy business. They've created a sort of a magnetic unit, so to speak, that will not only reduce the carbon impression or footprints, whatever have you, but also reduce the liability and the cost of actually serving energy. Not only for the little guy, but also for the major industries and utility industries, for the county and state and so forth, but also big hotels, big factories and so forth and so on. And if you look at their approach, this is a very young company, have some really major players on their board of directors. They're going to be with some of the leaders in that field.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is this in generation? Because we know the electromagnetic field is what produces energy through a concept that they call generation. But there's also a storage component to it, where you don't basically no longer need the wires running to your house. At your house become an independent power production facility. Is that the type of unit?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yes.
And I foresee that we're going to be just a community, or we're going to live on this planet much more empowered to survive. Okay.
Yes.
The one client that I was telling you about came to us. They're looking for about $5 million. The one unique concept of this, what people don't look for, they're going to be setting up distributors in all the major cities.
Oh, beautiful.
And these distributors are going to be calling on government agencies and utility companies, but not only that, also the private sector. And that's going to give out tremendous jobs. You know, everyone complains about the idea we don't have jobs.
Yeah.
This company is going to produce somewhere in the neighborhood of almost close to 40,000 jobs across the United States. I mean, astronomical, their business plan.
Is that under your 90-day plan?
No, not quite. I wish it was. I wish it was. But I think the unique thing about all of our clients are people that not only affect their own pocketbook, increase that money, but also affect the pocketbooks of many people around them,
Yes, and that's the shared responsibility that we have, and also it addresses the global warming and other aspects of that. Now, we could go on all day about energy because that's my baby. I love energy. But I think it's important to go on and talk a little bit more about BC as he progressed through the 20s and the 30s and moved on up to where he is now, and some of the programs that you basically engage in. So I'm going to open it up. I'm just going to let you speak till you get tired.
Let me do it this way. Let me do this by example, okay?
Yes.
I talked to you a little bit about this energy company, okay? And we're really quite excited about that. But let me tell you about another client that we have. It's a lady who basically has been in the physical fitness business for about 20 years. The name of the company is called Balchi, balchifit.com, if you go to the internet. There are three great things that come out of this. As you know, we're under a lot of stress in our world right now.
Yes.
This program addresses the idea of the spirit, the mind, and the body in a cohesive, unified, effective way of transforming the human being. Not only just losing weight or addressing some of the target areas of arthritis or back problems or diabetes, whatever, which we have a growing problem in our communities. But it also addresses the idea that people can now, again, be empowered to handle their health.
Yes.
They could also be empowered, I believe very seriously, to empower their spirituality.
Yes.
And they can be now given more power where they don't have to sit into a community or a room and listen to someone else. They can now empower themselves to make decisions, to judge what is right and wrong, and to work it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
This one particular client, like the energy company, is addressing this issue of bringing on instructors. For example, they're on a big campaign. Now, they won't have as many distributors as instructors as this one energy company.
Yes.
But they'll have an effect on ladies who basically want to go into physical fitness. They're providing a training program, licensing arrangements with some of the major players from water companies, from vitamins and minerals, proper diets, foods, and stuff like that.
Yes.
They're going to be releasing an infomercial. Now, to show you an interesting point, most of the clients that come to us have never went into the infomercial world. Now, let me just jump a little off to the side here. In the 1970s, when I came to California, I came here to 68, in the 1970s, I was in San Francisco. And I was first exposed to the television media. Okay, at that time there wasn't cable or anything like that, but just basically the major networks. And at that time, I was watching how businesses were really moving in terms of advertising and marketing their wares. And so we worked with a company out of Los Angeles that is a phenomenal, we put together a joint venture so that when a new client comes to us and they don't have the money to really get onto the major cable or satellite or networking televisions to advertise their marketing, we have now forged a joint venture with this company down in Los Angeles where we can literally get a company on there with very little money. We can now, again, even the playing field, allow them to advertise just like all the major players and still be able to make a great deal of money.
I just want to tell those in the audience, if you want to watch this online, you can go to nlwcwoodbine.net and watch it live on your smartphone. If anybody in the audience wants to see how it looks on the web. So go ahead, Mr. Marshall.
Okay, so that was the 70s. I got involved in the television industry. Actually, in the 70s, I put together a karate school. Now, this is to show you interesting how synergistically and how events take place in a person's life. In the 70s, I owned 3 karate schools. As a result of that, we used to put on kickboxing events there in California. And we were very fortunate to have Chuck Norris and people like that at the place. It was during the time of Bruce Lee and what have you. But I was watching how these people focus so much on their bodies and their mind and spirit. It was just absolutely phenomenal. 20, 30 years later, I meet this lady who has the same identical implant of the same spirituality of wanting to put together this kind of transformation. And it was almost as though like I had been sitting there and been praying for 20 years or 30 years to see a dream come true, that you could really combine the physical world with the spiritual and the mind part of the world. So again, the name of the company is Balchi International. Those who want to be interested could, of course, always look it up on the website.
Yes.
And again, with the energy company. In the 80s, that was a phenomenal time for me. I moved over to Sausalito, California. At that time, I was involved in the leasing business. That gave me all my background in finance. You know, I was in the leasing business. In the 90s, went back into the real estate, started teaching real estate as opposed to buying and selling real estate. And then, of course, I hit into the 20s. My goal, basically, our company's goal right now is to help 100 people per year become millionaires.
All right.
Okay. We're going to take people to whom have never had an opportunity, empower them with the information, education, application tools to become a millionaire in the shortest period of time. If I told you the time that we believe we can do this, it would you'd probably fall out of your chair. But in any case, I won't shock the audience or anything else. But let's just say this, that if you can think of time as just like Einstein would have thought of it, as being a commodity that can expand and contract and expand according to your belief in it as to what it is. In other words, you know that everything takes longer than we think it will be, or it's shorter based upon our perception of it.
Yes.
So what we do with a client, we say, I'll ask a client, for example, what are your numbers? Okay, you know, well, how many sales you're going to make, in what period of time you're going to make it, and usually they say 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I said, if those barriers were taken away from you, say there was no limitation of time, and you could do it at any time, you could do it in 24 hours, how would you do it? Now, there was a lady, I'm going to share something with everybody in the audience. This was a very famous comedian. She was making roughly, I guess, about $500,000 a year, working every day, doing the stage work, okay? She then went on a QVC, or started her own jewelry line. She made more money in 20 minutes, $250,000 in 20 minutes than she did in a year. Now that's to show you, but all because of using a type of platform, a type of model that no one else knew about. QVC came on. She came up with some jewelry idea. I mean, I guess she could have came with perfume, I guess, or anything.
Yes.
You know, pots and pans, whatever. But the point is, she used a different kind of medium in which to move that along. So our goal basically is to take a new people, bring them into training, steer them in the right direction, give them encouragement, which I think is extremely important because usually the world around them doesn't give them any encouragement that they're going to be successful. They go into a bank, they say, no, we're not going to even open up your checking account if you've got a listing here, if you've written a bad check. Now that really sends a message to them, right?
Yes, it really does.
Yeah, okay. And it destroys their self-esteem, it destroys their ability to even believe. Yes, everyone's had mistakes, but we believe the fact that mistakes can be corrected.
Yes.
If given the opportunity to do so. So again, those years that I have been working with all of these different companies have given me the opportunity to share a lot of this information with many of the people that come into our business for help.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned the banking, it appears that the banks would be willing to lend people money because of the rules of banking. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what they call the rules of 9, where for every dollar on deposit they can lend $9. So theoretically, if a person puts $1,000 in a bank, the bank should be able to lend them at least half of that, and not lend them $9,000 basically, but $3,500, which would give the person the ability to go out and expand their business, and therefore when they have more assets, they can put more money in the bank. But it seems with the federal rules that give the bank these operating procedures, why do you think they're not lending more money to the common person?
Well, the rules that we have in our country, or in the world for that matter, favor the few. And again, I hope I'm saying this correctly. They have always been designed to favor the few. They've never really been designed to favor the mass, okay,
yes,
per se, okay. And that's not being wrong or right, that's just the way it is. And so as a result of which, most of the banking industries have literally changed the rules since the recession we had. The bubble was burst.
Yes.
They become more conservative. They're cash. They've got nothing but cash on their hands, but they don't want to lend the money out.
Right.
They're not going to take the risks that they have, that they took before. In other words, if you could breathe, you'd get a loan.
Yeah.
If you could blow, air on a mirror, you'd get a loan. So those days are going to be gone. For the fact, I don't see that ever happening again for 20, 30 years, probably. Not in my lifetime, in any case. So what a person has to do now in order to get that money, that, as you indicate, should be loaned out to them naturally, they're going to have to come up with brand new ways to create this kind of capitalization. So there are 3 ways, essentially, that a business grows. 1, through capitalization, bringing money in.
Yes.
2, by going out and getting, producing sales.
Sales.
And 3rd, through acquisition.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you look at Twitter, you look at Facebook, you look at any of these major companies today, okay, they're not making any money in sales, but they're producing a tremendous amount in capitalization.
Yes.
Now, that seems strange that a company can capitalize themselves, be worth $20 billion, let's say hypothetically, and yet not have to make any sales.
Yes.
But that's to show you about how everything is upside down in that world.
Well,
also.
I have a conspiracy theory as it relates to that. I believe that the same, you know who Daddy Warbucks was, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Daddy Warbucks was the financier of the nation, basically. And I believe it's the financiers that produced those billionaires, like the Facebook billionaire, the Bill Gates of the world, where basically they were admitted that they basically were in relationships with other people.
Right.
But for some reason, they ended up on top, like Bill Gates ended up with the Windows program, which was already there. It was because it was on the Atari computer, because I had one in my music business. And Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, where he was in it with the twins at Stanford. And, they keep telling the story about Mark, how he was poor. I'm like, how can you be poor at Stanford?
Right.
You can't get in Stanford unless you have somebody that got some Warbucks behind them. So to me, it's like a figment, or it's the 3-card Molly, or the shell game that they play, or semantics that they use in order to basically say that anything is possible, when basically they set up the ones that they want to be successful, and basically eliminate those who they don't want to be successful.
Right.
What do you think about that conspiracy theory?
Conspiracy. Well, I'm not really quite certain I could use those words on the show, but there's a natural conspiracy, as I said before, for the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. They're
Yes.
just a natural phenomenon, okay?
Yes.
That just happens. It's nothing, it's just like the law of gravity, okay? It just happens.
Yes.
As I said before, what I have been doing all my life is really trying to work with people to whom we could fight against that kind of gravity, that kind of institutionalized reactions. Okay,
Yes, yes,
I'll word it that way.
Yes, yes.
And so even when I was I'll share something with you. When I was 17 years old, I wanted to go into space. I wanted to be an astronaut. Mm-hmm. So I called the Lewis Research Center, okay, and I asked, what does it take to become an astronaut, right? Or no, excuse me, a jet pilot, I think at the time. And there was this belief that because of your nationality or race, that your blood would boil at a certain speed, Mark 1, Mark 2, okay, Mark 2. And that literally discouraged me from going to I became a pilot though, by the way, but it discouraged me from going into the Air Force, it discouraged me from going into astronaut.
Because your blood.
Because I believe that concept, okay? So a lot of us are walking around with concepts that we believe is true without us really knowing it. And
Right.
we wonder why we react a certain kind of way.
Yes.
Now, it was only because I refused to listen to that I continued on in business, but it did discourage me from going
Yes.
into the astronaut program.
Yes, indeed.
But because of that, it made me want to become a pilot, and not that I'm going to speed of sound, but at least the fact that I could at least fly, to prove the fact that anyone can fly if they have the means and the passion and the desire to do
Yes,
so.
yes.
Okay. So getting back to what I believe about your audience, for an example, or anyone that's interesting, let me just say this. I believe that if you have an idea, and you truly believe in that idea, okay, and that idea not only benefits you and your family, but can benefit people, whether it's a nonprofit or a profit-making company, then you should pursue it. And you should try to get as much education as you possibly can. If you cannot afford education, today we live in a society that you can literally get it on the internet.
Yes, you can.
Okay?
I believe that.
Okay. Now, if you add that with good mentoring, good coaching, people who perhaps care about you, okay, you've got at least a even chance of at least trying to make it to that top.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the neat things that's happened that was not existent in my time. In my
Yes.
time, there were tanks going up and down the street. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyone who goes back in the 60s will remember what that was. And so for anyone to go into business it was obviously very difficult to go around a tank to go to your office. But in any case,
Yes.
it was almost like Beirut or Lebanon or someplace like that.
That
you
was
know.
that was 1968 when they shot Martin Luther King, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little boy then, but I definitely remember some of the activities that were going on because I was born and raised in Washington D.C.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, yeah, it was kind of rough back then. Yes, indeed. So, can you speak about the level of financial education among people at a certain economic strata? You believe that people who make more understand, have more financial literacy than those who make less? That's kind of a no-brainer because you would think that those who make a lot would have that financial education, but through my travels, and another one of my conspiracy theories,
Right,
I can
okay.
say it on
It's your show. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
that it's kind of, it's, the best way I can say this is, I really don't know, because sometimes the people that make more, they spend more, so they squander just as much as the people that don't make that much, and the people that don't make that much have a tendency to know how to preserve and save a lot more than the people that make more.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so the question is to you, who do you think has the better financial literacy?
Well, I guess it's really it's both an institutional kind of concept, but it's also an individual concept. I think that you can take a lot of dumb people and they can become very rich, and you can take a lot of smart people and become poor. You know, I don't really know the difference. I think really it's an individual matter. I think we all are responsible for our own destiny, are responsible for our own success, and therefore we're responsible for the people around us, our family and our children.
Yeah.
And I think that if we take that responsibility seriously, and we proceed in life with that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of direction, that kind of focus, then it doesn't really make any difference whether we're smart, we have a Harvard degree, or we don't. We can all become successful because we now have a pretty even playing field, regardless of that, of money and sales and marketing and going to IPOs. We all can learn the same thing that all the winners have used. We use a model in our business, sort of a pyramid. And for those of you who look on the back of your dollar bill, there's a picture of a pyramid. And I didn't even know that until a person pointed it out to me and said, well, you've got sort of an idea of a pyramid.
They call that the Illuminati or something, don't they?
But anyway, if you look at a pyramid and you divide it into 3 sections, there's the top 1%, there's a 5% below that, and then there's a 95ers. And we all start up at that bottom of that base of that pyramid, so to speak. And we all, through education and information, climb up that mountain, trying to go to that top. Now, along that way that we're going up that, things happen to us. We get married, we get fired, we have jobs, we can get sick, all kinds of things that can take place. We could fall out of school, we can get education, whatever have you. And for those who finally get to the top of that pyramid, I mean, whether they were smart starting off or not, they have gained a lot of knowledge because they've had to climb up, assuming you didn't inherit it, or you didn't win it by lottery, okay, that you actually earned your way through that pyramid. And so what we do in our classes, which is interesting, we bring that pyramid out and we ask the question, what is it that top 1% is doing that you're not doing? And we have them sit and write out a complete essay on the subject. What is the 1% doing that the 5% is not doing, or the 95er? And you'll be amazed to some of the results of these tests. Okay, some of them believe that they have been discriminated against. There's a reason why the 1% is over the other group. Some believe because of education. Some believe it's because of race. Some believe it is because of religion. It's amazing what it is. And very few come to the conclusion that it doesn't make any difference of all of those elements. It's still you have the power. You have the power, and you actually have the responsibility and the obligation to rise up there if you want to do so.
Yes.
And I think that's what the difference is.
Yes.
And so when we sit down with a client, I think we probably only accept about 10% of the clients. So out of 100 people, 90 people we don't accept. And it's not because their ideas are not great for the fact. It's because of their emotional garbage or baggage they have in their brain that we know we're going to be going uphill all the way through there to try to help them. So it doesn't mean that we're going to leave them. It just means that we're going to send them in a different direction for more information, education, application tools. And we work with that group of individuals that we believe has the greatest chance of winning and becoming successful at it. As I mentioned to you, like an energy company.
Yes.
Now, had they came in and talked about coal, for an example, or had they been talked about, fracking or firewood being put together and something like that, we might have been not that interested. Same thing for the lady with the Balchi Fit. Had she not instituted the spiritual mind and body concept together, had it been just a physical fitness program, that's okay, don't get me wrong. And then along with that, looking at the ability of bringing that every woman has now a right and ability to develop this training, right? Yes. And then to pass the training on as an instructor. So you see that thing growing. And that's what the 1%er, by the way, the difference is, the 1%er is thinking in those terms.
Yes.
Okay? Mm-hmm. They are leaving these legacies where the others are not necessarily doing so.
Okay, that sounds good. You said the ones that come in, we have all these type of mental and emotional baggage. Right. You tend to turn them away.
Well, I'm hoping we would put them in a different direction.
Yeah, I hope you don't do that to me.
I don't think there's any problem. I don't think there's any problem.
Because I think a little bit different, because I think of shared prosperity. And that's why I have the notion of hosting this show called Help Somebody, because I believe it's our fiduciary duty to help somebody. It's an obligation to help somebody, because everybody is not at the same level.
Correct.
And have the same tools to work with. Me and Michael were talking earlier about the use of money as a tool and not basically as a commodity. And I asked the question, I said, if you was locked in a room and you had $10 billion in that room with you, and you had 10 minutes to live, and there was somebody on the other side of the door that had a hammer, and all you needed was a hammer to get out of that room, and the person on the other side of the door said to you, the cost of this hammer is $10 billion.
Right.
Would you buy the hammer?
You've asked that question to people before?
Yes. And they have the action, they think about it. What would you do? I'm asking.
I don't know. I don't really know.
I'd buy the hammer. I might hit you with the hammer once I open the door, but I'm buying the hammer.
Well, we were talking just before the show went on and about your goals and what you're doing here and your show, what you're doing. Your show. you know, the typical interviewing kind of show or talk show, whatever have you, is focused more on the host, let's say hypothetically, and I really want to appreciate the fact you're more focused on what you're talking to your guests, and you're focused on the people who are receiving the message, and you clarify that message. And I think that's really beautiful, because we need more of that kind of sincerity, I think, in giving the information, education out to people, so they can impact people. And I think that's really excellent, what you're doing with your organization.
Well, I don't think people really interested in hearing me. I think you're much more interested in bringing a lot of different avenues to help people understand their lives and what their potential is. And that's my goal in operating this show. I want to study to be quiet and to work with my own hands that I would not be without. I think that's in the book of Hebrews, where you basically allow the people who have the knowledge to impart the knowledge, and therefore you can get some of that knowledge if you just keep your mouth closed, because that's a big problem, especially among our new generation. You know, is it okay if we segue into the younger generation? I would say they call them the millennials. You know, the 20-somethings up to, I guess, around 30 years old. And this concept of getting money without any education, you know, there have been songs written about it, and they're just focused on getting money. But in that getting money, they leave themselves void of a lot of morals and a lot of ways to act, you know, civilized. And so, I'd like for you to expand on that concept and what you can do to help refocus our young people.
Well, you know, we live in a very fast-fix environment. At the time when I was coming up, the family was extremely important. Having dinner, for an example, is extremely important. Okay. And again, it's a kind of situation that it has changed so much. I mean, we have the internet, we've got multitasking, our brains are not functioning the way that they used to.
Wow.
And so we don't realize where our society is going. We're almost becoming like robots, you know, that we're trying to keep from getting into the air. But the difference is that the moral fiber of the person of the 60s or 50s, you know, the people on the television in the 50s, if you remember Ozzie and Harriet. And
Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah, Leave It to Beaver, stuff like that. It's totally different today. We see reality shows that depict
all types of behavior.
All types of behavior. So a young kid that's growing up today looks on television, sees this, and believes that that is the behavior. In our world, we believe that the behavior was what we saw on television
that
also.
was prohibitive.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that probably, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a shift at some point. There's going to be a crash.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's why we created the New Life Network, because we want to bring out the best in people and not the worst in people. Just like Russell Simmons, who I have great respect for, was on the Arsenio Hall show, and he had this black ball cap with an N on it.
Right.
And then they played the song My Hitter, My Hitter. You heard that song?
No.
Oh, man. Well, if you can think of another word that rhymes with hitter, with the N on his hat, kind of told you what he was talking about. And I have no problem with the word, I must say, because I believe that people use words in the way that they understand them in their own vernacular.
Correct.
Words mean different things to different people.
Correct.
And just because someone else meant it for bad doesn't necessarily, when you use it, mean it for bad. But the disconnect comes when you have a population that doesn't know how they're using it, or in the capacity that they're using it. And we're running out here. We're going to go about another three minutes. And so I wanted you to expound on how programs that you could possibly implement that could change the mindset.
Well, the one unique thing is that all of our clients, one of the criteria that we do have, as I indicated before, is not only, yes, making the buck, but it's also the fact that the impact that they are having basically on the community. Almost 80% of all of our clients have a nonprofit phase to it.
Wonderful.
We believe in getting not only government funding, but also private funding for jobs. because of the minimum wage situation, the only way that these people are going to get a higher income is to have private funding coming in, okay, where it's not restricted by the government. So in part of our criteria that we use with a lot of our clients is that it must have some kind of outreach or some kind of legacy to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so at this time, we want to end our program.
Okay.
Guest, B.C. Marshall,
Okay.
for being here with us tonight and for explaining all of the wonderful programs that you have, and we hope that we can have you back again sometime.
Absolutely.
And possibly get some of your clients to outline some of their products that they
Absolutely.
want to bring to the world. So we thank you tonight for joining us, and join us again next time for Help Somebody.
Thank you.
All right, sir.
Thank you.